All right, everybody, we are live with the Combatcast after a very exciting UFC 320 pay-per-view. Got a big fight night coming up, Oliveira versus Gamrot. And please like and subscribe if you're watching this and you enjoy it. Chevy, let's tell people what we got coming up.
All right, October 18th, UFC Fight Night, DeRitter versus Allen. That's a 7 p.m. Main event from Vancouver. And then October 25th, UFC 321, Aspinall versus Gane for the heavyweight title, 2 p.m. from Abu Dhabi. And then November 1st, UFC Fight Night, Garcia versus Onama. That's a 7 p.m. Apex card, and boy, does it look terrible right now.
Well, yeah, hopefully when we move over to CBS and Paramount, maybe we'll have a little more consistent, better cards, but we will see how that goes. I will be being the optimist. But, hey, UFC 320 was something to be optimistic about. This was a fun show. I enjoyed it a lot. Before we get into this main card, which only had one decision on it, so a lot of great finishes. Any other things on this card you want to address? Any other fights? Anything?
Oh, yeah, Patchy Mix. He lost a second fight in a row here in the UFC. Highly touted coming in. It was controversial, I guess you would say. But it was a close fight, and he has his second loss. So I know we talked about this before, but I thought the guy was going to be like a top 5 guy coming in, but he just does not look the same. I don't know if you can chalk it up to just UFC level talent because he just doesn't look the same. He has no head movement. His grappling doesn't look the same.
There's a guy I'm thinking of a couple of years ago who had a couple wins over Michael Chandler. They had split in Bellator, and he came into UFC.
Brett, oh no!
And he came to UFC, and he just didn't work out. You know, I just sometimes wonder, like, if they get so far in their head and they don't win, it just seems like they fall apart. You know, somebody's.
Pitbull's not doing too great in his UFC thing. Chandler putting on exciting fights, but not getting very many wins. So
no, Chandler. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was looking. Somebody posted up something a couple of days ago, and they were listing all the people who came to UFC, and this didn't do very well. I mean, somebody posted Eddie Alvarez, and they were quick to point out Eddie actually did win a championship. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you look at there's a lot of guys who just made that crossover, and they do seem to struggle. There is a different level of competition. It's not the case with everybody. You know, guys like DeRitter right now are doing really well.
Yuri came from Ryzen, you know, and he's been
so there's definitely successful cases out there, but I do think there is something to not only the level of competition in the UFC, but just the mental game of once you get to that next level and realizing, especially if you don't start winning out of the gate, you know, and you lose a couple, then I think it becomes
pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it becomes even more of a problem for a lot of these people. But, you know, there's some good stories on this card. We'll get to with some people who have bounced back, you know.
Yeah. Edmund Shabazi, and speaking of those guys, he was on the prelims, got his third straight win, you know, back in the win column. Very highly touted prospect coming up. He's been in the UFC since he was like 20, had a couple rough streaks at this point, but looking pretty good right now. So shout out to him. We're a fan of him here. So, but let's get into this main card here. Starting off with Abus Magomedov versus Joe Pyfer.
Yes. Not even looking at my notes. I was trying to share this, but I can tell you off the top of my head. Big thing I wrote down in my notes I remember is what a difference a round makes. Because I remember watching this, and Abus, that first round is taking him down. He's clinching. And I'm just thinking like, oh, man, he looks better than Joe Pyfer here. He just looks like he's on another level. And I'm thinking, the only thing I'm wondering is, I remember, you know, we talked about in question Abus's cardio as well. And I thought, could it be the game plan that, you know, they're going to try to wear him out? And sure enough, round 2 comes. Joe just starts with the bigger shots. He's the aggressor. And then before you know it, He's got him down. And, oh, man, what was this? Was this
face crank? Yeah.
Yes, face crank. There you go. Yeah. So, awesome for Joe Pfeiffer. Great to almost – obviously, you never no one ever says, hey, I really want to get beat up the first round. But in retrospective, really great performance, overcoming that adversity and then, getting that submission like that. I think it even puts more of a positive spotlight on Joe right now. And I was looking at the rankings this morning. I think he's literally 15 right now. Like he's just cracked the top 15. I like to see him fight. And this is a dangerous one, but I think if just because of the styles, I like to see it. Paulo Costa.
Oh, yeah. That's a tough fight.
Just to see him banging, I think would be interesting, because I think Joe has a unique style, but you talk about a guy who's had a lot more big-time fights than he has,
And Paulo can take a shot, too, so.
Yes. So I just think – but you're looking at the top 15 now, and Paulo's not, super high up there, so he's going to be jumping in stiff competition sooner or later.
Yeah. I wouldn't bet on Joe in any fight. I mean, he does keep winning, but you never know what you're going to get from him. Ultimately, he came out and showed some good grappling, but he had to get beat up in that first round to wake up, he said. He just wasn't feeling it or whatever. He often seems to have issues inside and outside of the cage, but he does keep winning, so good for him. He showed that he's not just a overhand right knockout guy. So if he can continue to round out his game, and use some other weapons, that'll open up a lot more for his amazing power.
No doubt.
All right, moving on to the next fight here. Josh Emmett versus Youssef Zalal.
All right, Youssef Zalal. I wanted to point this out. So this Youssef Zalal was an interesting story that I didn't realize going into this. I knew he was credible. It was interesting is that he had been in UFC and cut. I knew that, and he came back. But since getting cut, he went on a 3-fight win streak out of the UFC. And since coming to the UFC, he has submitted Bill Quarantino, James Ernst, Jack Shore, decision win over Calvin Kattar, and now submitted Josh Emmett. So, you talk about just being on a tear right now in the UFC, and he looked really good. I do want to say Emmett looked a little off to me, but I don't want to take anything away from Youssef because I just thought maybe that's Youssef. I just thought Youssef looked much like Abus did in the first round of the other fight, except for Youssef never had the problem. And then, so what did Emmett get his arm broken or was it a dislocation? Did we ever find out?
No, he just verbally tapped because he knew he wasn't getting out of it, is what it seemed.
I saw him holding that arm afterwards, and I wondered if there was an injury too.
I didn't hear about it if he did have an injury. So
Youssef, though, next opponent, I thought be a fun fight for him. Grappling, someone who can maybe hang with him, Aljamain Sterling.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Josh said that he spent his camp working on his power.
Okay.
Which, I mean, we saw what he did to Bryce Mitchell.
Got power. So.
Yeah, of all the things to work on, I don't know what he was doing there. But, Youssef just used movement and fight IQ to nullify that, and he used speed. So he looked much better in the short amount of time he was in there. We didn't get to see too much, but that's a good win for him to put him, in contention for those ranked spots up there. So looking forward to his next fight.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, moving on. I don't know if this got fight of the night, but it probably should have. Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Roundtree Jr.
It was fight of the night, and also a performance of the night for Prochazka. So double bonus for this guy. Well deserved. We'll get to it later. Pereira and Merab are obviously, the stars of, but Prochazka, he's right there, right? He's arguably was the star of this show. I'm watching this fight, and I'm seeing Roundtree, like we talked about, really looking like it's really dawned on me as I'm watching the fight, like how improved he is. And I'm seeing the striking he's putting on round 1 and 2. And I'm like, all right. I was like, this is good. It's a fun fight. Roundtree looks like, and I was kind of rooting for Roundtree originally. I like Prochazka, but I know he had his 2 losses to Pereira already. So I thought, see if Khalil can get in there. But man, round 3, again, what a difference a round can make, because now Prochazka just starts turning it on. And we have a dog fight in there too. Like, Prochazka's really got the upper hand, but Khalil's still hitting some good shots once in a while. And I'm kind of wondering, like, is Khalil trying to like bait him? No. No, he was not. He was not. And Prochazka comes back, gets the finish, TKO round 3, KO, I guess, because this was a knockout. I don't know what they called it, but it was a knockout. And yeah, super exciting performance, to the point that even though he's lost 2 to Bahera, I think after this performance, he's made a really good case you would want to see him in there again, you know. And then even going on later, like during the fight when Bahera wins, and we'll talk about that more later, you see a shot at Prochazka, he just looks emotional. And it's just Prochazka being himself, you know, this unique guy is. And to me, he comes off like one of the stars of the UFC. And I hope that he's a guy for him that keeps having success. I almost maybe don't want to do Bahera yet, you know, like maybe give him another fight and maybe he wins that one and you keep both guys strong. But, you know, we'll see. There's a lot of things that can move with Bahera too, as we get to that later.
Pineda's talking about going up to heavyweight,
right?
Anyway, too. So we don't even know if he's going to stay champ.
And if he does, then it makes sense. Carl Solberg and Prochazka should just fight for the vacant light heavyweight champion. That's a clear path, then, if that's the case.
Yeah. Khalil was looking fantastic, really, until he got tired. So, you know, once he gassed out, he couldn't keep his hands up or get out of the way of any of the shots. Yuri immediately noticed that and capitalized on it. So good for him. I mean, the fight was as advertised. It was super fun, like we hoped and anticipated it was going to be. But, you know, you would like to imagine that Yuri would, you know, I feel like he's not really improving or changing his game, not evolving. He gets in these like kind of wars. He's in and out with his movement. He has, you know, awkward movement. And he tries to throw these flying knees and stuff. But I don't see a lot of evolution in his game. So if he does fight Pineda, I don't see it going any differently for him. If anything, it's probably worse. But yeah, like I said, I think Alex is going to end up going up, or he would like to go up, and him and Olberg, it's a very fun fight.
Absolutely.
All right, moving on to the co-main event here. Merab Dvalishvili versus Corey Sandhagen.
Well, we talked about it. You know, we talked about it beforehand. Like, we both like Corey a lot, and Corey's a great, versatile bantamweight. He's got so many good tools, and really, in a lot of ways, we thought, you know, a good matchup for Merab. But as I said, until somebody shows me any different, like, I don't know who's stopping Merab. Now, when I watched again this fight too, the first round, not like the other ones we talked about, but Corey was doing well, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. But then it just started rolling. Then Merab just starts feeling himself. And I thought Merab was striking a little bit too much, honestly, in the early on too. But the problem is Merab's getting better with striking, and the rest of his game is still so good. Nobody can stop his wrestling. His cardio is probably the best, like, Hall of Fame cardio. There's a Hall of Fame for cardio. Like, he's got his own wing. And, I don't know what to do with this guy. I know he wants to keep fighting at bantamweight. Good for him. Bring on the next challenger, whoever that's going to be. He's beating everybody. I know he's not a big guy, but man, I'd like to see him try to go up to featherweight one time, especially if the guy's the size of a Volk or somebody like that, just to see how he do out there. Because man, until this guy starts to lose a step at this point, you could be looking at like 10, 11 title defenses, like Anderson Silva level here.
Yeah. I mean, this fight went the way a lot of people expected it to go, honestly. So I think the most shocking part was that Merab almost KO'd Corey in the second round. And I'm pretty sure Corey hasn't been KO'd in the UFC by anyone. Yeah. And, you know, to the vast improvement in Merab's striking since he just became champ has been a big jump. I mean, obviously his wrestling game and the threat of that opens up a lot of opportunities for striking.
Right.
But, you know, for him to go in there and put hands on Corey like that. I mean, Corey he changed his game a lot. He wasn't switching stances and stuff. I think he was very concerned about the wrestling takedowns. And, you know, I think he got taken down like 10 times or something. But overall, you'd say his takedown defense was pretty good compared to a lot of other guys.
Yeah.
You know, when he got to the cage, he did a good job of, you know, stopping some takedowns. And when he did get taken down, he got right back up. You know, I think some of that was Merab not trying to hold him down. I think he said afterwards he was trying to pad some stats. He did end up getting his 100th UFC takedown in this fight. A lot of that is just letting Corey get back up while he has his arms around him and then taking him down again. But bummer for Corey, because I think a lot of these guys they're not going to be champ because nobody can really beat Merab. I don't see anyone beating him without like just catching him with something, and then he's gonna get an immediate rematch and he's gonna demolish you in the rematch. So he's nearing bantamweight GOAT status at this point. It's close between him and Cruz.
Absolutely. And I would say, I don't know why this idea just popped in my head, and it's probably not likely, but going into a new era of, you know, Paramount and everything like that, Merab is so good that if I was the UFC, just as a gimmick, I would try to cut deals with maybe some of these other promotions like Ryzen and do like unified title fights with just Merab, because those other promotions can get some publicity and you don't really have to worry. And if it happens, he gets caught, you can just do a rematch and he'll beat him just like that. Like, he's just that good, you know, like he could be a special attraction for you. I feel like it's safe money at this point.
The UFC is never going to do that. They don't want to give any other promotion any shine at all. Like, they don't even want them spoken about in a UFC.
But this would be the guy. Like, he could.
Yeah. Their belts are safe for sure. With
yeah. No words.
All right, let's move on from one UFC star to the biggest UFC star.
Absolutely.
Magomed Ankalaev. No, I'm just kidding. Alex Pereira.
Dude, I had a friend of ours who's not a huge MMA fan text me about this one. He always asks me who I had to pick. And he's like, did you pick Pereira beating him in 80 seconds? And I'm like, no. I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I knew he could catch somebody. Don't get me wrong. I said, after what Ankalaev did previously, I didn't see it happen. And then he pointed out, like everybody else did, and he did. He said, well, you know, Pereira said he was hurt. I was like, everybody says that. I was like, everybody has our injury or something like that. But at this point, maybe he did. See, there's the thing, though. It's like, you know, a lot will be made of this about how Pereira just, you know, took him out and everything like that. But we've talked about this in the past. Pereira always has that capability. Like, I don't know if you rematch him again, you're going to get the same result. Right. But I will say this. What was impressive in that 80 seconds was, and immediately I knew, was Pereira was cutting off that octagon and pressing in a confident way that I thought, this is strange. Like, you know, I remember in the last fight, Ankalaev was able to clinch a lot more and really stop, and he looked confused. Like, you know, like Pereira was showing him different things like he wasn't expecting. And I was like, that's strange. But sure enough, he caught him. Didn't even look to me personally like, you know, like it was a solid shot, but it's not one of those highlight reels, you know. It was. I
think it was because it was like on his ear, so it kind of threw off his equilibrium.
Yeah. And then he went at it, and then kind of funny because I know there wasn't a lot of complaints about an early stoppage, just a little bit. And I didn't think it was an early stoppage. I thought it was great. But given that it was like Herb Dean in the main event, I was actually a little surprised. Like, I thought for sure, like, oh, Ankalaev's going to get a little more chance. And I'm like, really? But, you know, at the end of the day, Pereira is such a superstar for this company. This is exactly what they wanted, whether they tell you that or not. This is what they needed. Yeah. This is perfect scenario. And, you know, Dana talked about, you know, like, I think he has a lot to accomplish at light heavyweight, but he's also mentioning that these guys are at to perform. He didn't have to tell you that story. So I think Dana is kind of being a promoter here, and he wants it at heavyweight. You know, Pereira wanted to call out John Jones for this. He did the classy thing, of course. John's brother, Arthur, tragically passed away. So, he held off in a respectful way and didn't make that call out, but he didn't acknowledge it. He said it was supposed to happen, but he says now's not the time for that. I would like to say, though, whether it's John Jones, whether it's the winner of Tom Aspinall, Zero Gun. And by the way, if for some reason Gon catches Aspinall, then I'm the UFC. I make that Bahera fight next. Like immediately. I sign up, get that guy a chance to go out and be heavyweight champion and be a 3 weight class champion. Because what a story, Chevy. I gotta look this up real quick here. I think I know the answer anyway. Bahera has had here we are. Yeah, 13-3. So 16 pro MMA fights. He's now a 2-time light heavyweight champion, a former middleweight champion, and I think I saw somewhere he's defeated like 6 world champions all in all in his MMA career. You take in fact, his kickboxing career was legendary too. This guy's a combat sports GOAT. Like he's on the Mount Rushmore at this point of combat sports. Yeah. It's insanity.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to the fight. To what there wasn't a lot going on. Yeah, Alex just super aggressive. He wanted to show that the injuries and the illness were really the cause of the loss last time. So he just rushed across the ring and put it on Ankalaev immediately. So I thought that, I thought Herb gave Ankalaev all the time in the world to defend himself on the ground. And once Alex started landing those 12-6 elbows, he could have stopped it right there for me. He landed, I think, 1 or 2 to the body, which it turns out Ankalaev had broken ribs going into this fight. So, I mean, he, came in injured as well. And then I think Alex knew about that and targeted those ribs, is what I've heard. And then he landed at least 1 to the head too. So, and he was just had his hands covering his head the whole time. There was no real defense. So, people saying that was too early are just Alex haters, I think. So,
and I think too, one other thing to point out too is Herb literally did say very loud enough for everybody to hear, you need to defend yourself, change positions, and Live couldn't. So
yeah. So we don't need to see a rematch of this.
Nope. I know the UFC doesn't want to do it, but really,
the UFC is so happy that Ankalaev is not champ because he's so unmarketable. Part of that is because he's facing Pinto, who is so loved. So whoever is fighting against Alex is going to get a lot of hate. Ankalaev, not the most boring, especially of the Dagestani fighters, not the most boring guys. Style-wise, his just personality is not exciting.
I mean, Prohaska or Olberg, if one of those guys fights Bahera next, or say Bahera doesn't go up to heavyweight, whoever doesn't fight him is an interesting matchup with Ankalaev too, because obviously I could see him being a problem for Prohaska, but Prohaska's so awkward, he has the capability of just catching Ankalaev too. So on another note too, it makes some more interesting matchups at light heavyweight potentially too for the UFC. But I also, as a fan, I think Alex is just one of those guys I'd like to see him go to heavyweight next, only because it's like you don't get an opportunity like this where somebody catches on like this.
Right. He's a special guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And if he doesn't do it, it's fine. You just put him back in light heavyweight, because I think that's ultimately probably the best division he probably does belong in, but I think he deserves a shot.
Yeah. It was a great card.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun card. And this coming UFC Fight Night, we'll get to it. This main event, I mean, we'll talk about the rest of the card, but I really like this main event.
Yeah, couple noticeable prelims. Walter Walker, Johnny Walker's brother, is a heavyweight. I think he has like 3 or 4 leg lock submissions in a row. He's fighting Muhammad Usman, Kamaru Usman's brother.
Interesting.
I expect another leg lock. Usman has almost 0 grappling. And then Vicente Luque versus Joel Alvarez. Joel Alvarez is a guy that is not super well known. Unfortunately, he had a couple injury issues, but he is incredibly talented. So this is a very good matchup versus Luque. I hope we get a good amount of grappling because both guys are very good grapplers in that one. But keep an eye out for Joel Alvarez. But let's get in this co-main event here. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Montel Jackson.
Montel Jackson is 15-2, 8 KOs, 1 subs, 6 decisions, 9-2 in the UFC, 2 performance of the night, and he's had most knockdowns in UFC bantamweight division history, which I thought was an interesting stat. Also, interesting to point out, especially when you're taking on a veteran like Deiveson Figueiredo, who has a lot of finishes. Montel has never been finished. Mm-hmm. So at least in his pro career. Figueiredo is 24-5-1, 9 subs, 9 KOs, 6 decisions. He's a 2-time former flyweight champion, performance tonight 1 time, and he's tied Demetrius Johnson for the second most finishes in flyweight division history, only behind Pantoja. So Figueiredo, we know this guy. He's a legend. He's dangerous. I think that this is Montel Jackson's time to shine. I think he's tough. I think he's got power, and I think they're going to have a really good fight. A lot of fireworks. I think it'll be good, but I'm going to go with Montel by decision here.
I thought that Corey tore up Davison's knee when he beat him in May. So 5 months seems pretty quick. I hope he's fully healed.
Right.
But this is a big step up for Jackson here. But if he's going to break into the rankings, now's the time. He's on a 6-fight win streak. He's 33 years old, so he's in his prime here. But he is facing a former champion, albeit at a different weight class. So I think this one could be pretty close depending on which Figueiredo we see. But I'm with you. I'm going to go with Montel by decision.
Middle name is Samuel, by the way. Montel Samuel Jackson. So you know.
Samuel Jackson. Nice. I like that. All right, moving on to this main event here. The real highlight of the card. This is a relatively weak card overall, but this one is a very good fight. Charles Oliveira versus Mateusz Gamrot.
Mateusz Gamrot, 25-3-1, 8 KOs, 5 subs, 12 decisions, 2 performances of the night. Fight of the night 3 times. Fastest submission by Kimura in UFC history, 65 seconds over Jeremy Stevens. So just a little fun fact for you that he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights, with his only loss being a split decision by Dan Hooker. Just as notable, like Montel Jackson, his pro career, of his few losses, he's never been finished. And that's going to be super important in this fight because Charles Oliveira is a finishing machine. He's 35. Well, all right. That's not right. That must be like 11. I know I have 1-1. There's no way Charles has more. Anyway, Charles Oliveira, we know who he is. All right. He's a former 1-time lightweight champion, fight of the night 4 times, performance of the night 13 times. All right. He's got like the most bonuses in UFC history. He's even got 3 submissions of the night back when they don't do that. Charles Oliveira is ultimately one of the most exciting fighters of all time, arguably the most exciting fighter of all time. But, you know, he is coming off a knockout loss to Ilya. And Ilya, say what you will, when he knocks people out like this, we've seen it before, it can change people for a little bit. You know, like Volk came back, but, you know, he tried to come back a little too soon, and it wasn't good. So that being said, I don't know. This is an interesting fight. As much as I liked Montel, and I think part of me says Gamrot, this could be his time too, I'm going to go with Charles here. I'm going to go with Charles, and I'm going to go 3rd round submission. Even though Gamrot's never been finished, Charles is so good at so many different places that I could just see him catching him. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, Charles' recent losses are to great wrestlers, and he is facing another one here. Of course, he is the record holder for submissions, and as such is very dangerous off his back. And Charles is dangerous in the clinch too, which is where Gamrot likes to get his takedowns from. So very interesting matchup. I'm going to pick with my heart on this one. So I'm going to pick Charles by TKO. I'll say round 4 later on. I think he struggles early and clips him like in the clinch later on.
And by the way, I was thinking about this too. And it's just so funny because the belt was never really taken seriously. But the winner of this could be a prime candidate for a BMF title shot too. Because now that Max has got that title, you know what I mean? And it's like lightweights pretty much challenged for it. Like I feel like there's like a certain excitement. Like that makes a great co-main event spot on a lot of these cards.
I don't want to see anyone fight for the BMF belt before Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker is the only guy I want to see fight for that belt at this point.
But if Dan wins his next fight, maybe he should be fighting for the actual lightweight championship too, though.
Yeah, well, beating
Arman Tsarukyan, yeah.
Yeah, that should get you a title shot, but
we'll see what happens. But I understand your point. Dan Hooker would be, and also Dan Hooker versus Max Howell. Yeah. I mean, yeah, sign me up. That would be awesome. All right, so we had a great pay-per-view. We have a great fight night main event here coming this week. So definitely some good things to look forward to. Before we get to that, before we get out of here, why don't we tell people what we got coming up one more time?
October 18th, UFC Fight Night, DeRitter versus Allen. That's a 7 p.m. Eastern from Vancouver. October 25th, UFC 321, Aspinall versus Gaan. That's 2 p.m. Eastern from Abu Dhabi. And then November 1st, UFC Fight Night, Garcia versus Onama. That's a very fitting 7 p.m. Apex card.
All right, guys. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and make sure you tune in next week. Thanks for looking us up. And